Hey, it's Evil Techie and we're back. Today we got the SHP9600, the X2HR and the X3 all together for a sound review. I know many of you are so anxious to hear what I have to say about it. Good news is after hearing them for so many countless hours over the last few days, I can tell you, even though they all have a 50mm open back architecture, they do sound different. And even the X2HR and the X3, they do sound different. So that's the good news. It's not just an appearance that's different. They do sound different. But before I get into the sounds of it, or my impression of what they sound like, let's take a look at their look and feel and also durability first. Last time we didn't get to talk about the SHP9600, which is a successor to the very, very popular SHP9500. The SHP9500 had a little bit of a different design that was a little bit bold in the way that it has big L and R written on the sides of the ear cups. Some people really hated that. I was okay with it, but you know, I think this generation here has gotten quite a big improvement in terms of look and feel. But overall, I'm very happy to see that Philips is still continuing with what it thinks is working and what we all love and like about these headphones. So first of all, with the SHP9600, it's still a little bit more plasticky than your more premium headphones, and it kind of fits within its price range. But overall, the build quality and the material, even though it's plastic and steel and foam, is still very good quality. It should last you quite a few years. And foam padding is on the headband part is very generous, and there's quite a bit of adjustment, and of course they still got this tape there if you're familiar with them with the 9500s. And mostly it's plastic. There's a little bit of metallic grill here. The one thing I really do like about them is they're still very lightweight, very comfortable. Initially, there's a lot of tension in the band, but I think that'll ease up over time, just like the old 9500s. And design is fairly similar as the old one. You still have this single-sided cable. That means you can hook up a Voda mic or any other boom mics with it quite easily. And it's still got a very long 3-meter cable with an adapter. And the cable is a little bit more of a rubberized texture, so it's not as premium as the fabric sleeved cables on the X2 or the X3. A lot of people didn't like the fact that the old ear cups on the 9500s were glued. I'm happy to report that, let me get these out of the way. I'm happy to report that these, you could actually take them apart now. I'm going to try not to break mine. And I did it once before, but voila. So there are 5 or 4 plastic clips with some notches that you align, and you could potentially swap them out. These foam ear cups are not as thick. They're fairly comfortable. I do like the mesh fabric that's on it, but they're not as thick or you know, don't have as much depth as the X3s or the X2HRs. So for my ears, they didn't fit that well because they're kind of big, and if your head curves back, I mean, there's bound to be a little gap. So it won't create a very good seal. Now, speaking of seal, none of these are good headphones for you know, listening when you're in a crowded area, because they leak a lot of noise. And that's the nature of open back earphones. It's just, you know, people around you can hear what you're hearing. So do be careful what you're playing around with them. Let me put these back. Okay. Let's talk about the X2s. X2s, again, are fairly comfortable, and I would say it's one of the most comfortable design out there. Philips has done a great job. The design is very simplistic. And it is a little subtle, but yet over in the sense that it's got this big headband on it. It's fairly big in size. There are a lot of metal parts involved, even though this ear cup portion is plastic. Little quirks I found about it was a little annoying, is that these metal rims that would try to pull on when I'm trying to take them on, put them on or take them off, they're quite sharp. So there's a quite sharp of an edge here from machining, and that kind of hurts my fingers when I touch it. And also, thanks to one of your comments, someone mentioned that they dropped these on the floor, and because these connectors, these pivot points or pins are plastic in nature, that you could potentially break them if you're not very careful, or if you're put quite a bit of force on them, step on them, for example. So do be careful with them. But otherwise, it's still got the single-sided cable, and then it's quite easy to tell which side is left and right, because you do have one-sided, and then there's big L and R on the inside. So that's a good thing about these X2 HRs. Now the X3s, on the other hand, they're two-sided inputs, and comes with it is the also the balanced cables. So again, you have the 2.5 millimeter TRS for balanced inputs, and the cables are fairly long and nice, and it's 3 meters in length. What I have is the unbalanced cable hooked up to it. But because there's no big writing, and it's very subtle, if you just look closely here, there's a little R and there's a little L, and then these are all two-sided, so symmetrical in design. It's very hard to tell which way is left and right if you're not paying attention. Apart from looking at the letters, these are pointed kind of towards away from you, so you could tell that from that it is oriented a certain way, but it's very subtle, hard to tell. And on the plus side, Philips has come a long way in terms of design, but they've kept, again, a very simplistic, clean, and elegant look. And I think they levitated that with even more premium materials. I mean, just the smell of leather, it's like a new car smell. So I really enjoy it whenever I put it on, and especially when I'm taking them off and on. The metal edging here is smooth, it's rounded, it's very well constructed, and it seems like an anodized metal. So I don't think this will wear off anytime soon. It's just really premium in build quality. And the connection pins, these are actually metal now, so I think it's going to be a lot more durable than before. Overall, it's just a lot more understated in its luxurious design language. It's almost like a new Volvo, a little bit of a Scandinavian design styling. It's very understated luxury, and it's elegant. So that's what I like about it. Okay, without further ado, let's get into the sound impressions. The first look is at the SHP9600 in terms of sound. And in terms of sound, it still carries that signature Philips open back dynamic drivers that gives you a little bit more wider soundstage. But these headphones, they are, well, very good and very comfortable to wear. I do find that it's a little bit more V-shaped in terms of sound signature. And that's no different than what people say about the 9500s as well. So I do believe it's mostly cosmetic, maybe just an upgrade in terms of appearance and fine-tuning on certain things. Maybe there's not too much change in terms of the sound. I don't own the SHP9500, so I guess I'll never find out in that case. But overall, when it comes to pop and rock music, these really do shine. It brings out a strong bass and good thump. But soundstage in terms of mid-range was a little bit more reserved and further back. So overall, I think just the sound signature's a little bit more raw. It's not as well balanced, and it is a little bit more V-shaped. But these are so comfortable to wear. There's so much pivoting and quite a bit of adjustments that I think you could wear these for hours on end. You would get too tired from these. And they're not exactly very super sharp to your ears, so I don't think you could get very fatigued from wearing these as well. And of course, again, it's got the single-sided input, so that means you could plug in something like this V-Moda mic and turn these into a very capable gaming headset. And I will say, heck, these are one of the best gaming headsets you could own if by just adding a $30 microphone. So that's that. Now let's move on to the X2HRs, and this is kind of, I would say, a step in between. So this is naturally the next one to talk about. Now again, these are so comfortable. Just the design itself is a little bit more brutish, and it's just a little bit more masculine, I would say. But in terms of sound signature, it is a step up from the SHP9600s, and these do give you a fairly more balanced sound signature. It's still a little bit more V-shaped, but I wouldn't say it's as much. What I do find is maybe some slight distortion in, I would say maybe around the 40K hertz range. It's just not as balanced. And when I play some songs from Michael Jackson where there's very high pitch, instrumental at the very beginning, this is almost so sharp that it's piercing. So yeah, it's great that in terms of details it's very high res, but I don't think it's very balanced in that sense. It is not, it'll give you the details, but perhaps a little bit more too upfront. And that's a little bit of a drawback. Now, in terms of bass, it's good. It's not the hardest pounding bass. I think it's a little bit more free airflow. But overall, it's still, I wouldn't say it compares very well to HD 59XX, or sorry, 599 or 5XX or HD 600. It's just a little bit step below that. But I mean, if you can find these for, under $100 or $120, these would be a great steal. And aesthetically, it's not, or structurally, it's not too different from the X3. So you're still getting a very comfortable pair of headphones. And again, it's just one of the best comfortable long-term wear headphones you could have. Very durable, except about the pin comments earlier. Now let's take a look at the X3. I'm just going to put them on because they're comfortable. And so in terms of sound, these then are another step up from the X2HR. I'm not saying that just because I pay more for these than my X2HRs. These actually do sound a little bit different. Now, it does stay within that Philips family of having a wider soundstage. It's just the nature of this kind of a open back architecture. But I do think these have a bit more free airflow to it. And the reason I'm saying that is because when I play these back to back with the X2HRs, my wife was saying that, hey, she could hear more coming out of these earphones by sitting beside me than with the X2HRs. So maybe there's just less obstructing the drivers behind them. And I think the X2HRs just have a little bit more foam and grids, just blocks out maybe a little bit more air. So maybe that's why, I don't know. Based on the photos we've seen of what the internal drivers look like, they look a little bit slightly different than X2HR, so maybe it is using a different driver. Both of them, Philips claims to have some damping gel, which the SHP9600 does not have. So maybe it's just the way they built them is so different too. But these do give you a more balanced sound, a better sound stage. It just feels that the mids is there a little bit more apparent in front of you, and that I could, you hear a little bit more detailed soundstage and positioning. Things are just a lot more clear in that end. And of course, when I heard the same song, I tested this about 8 times, that Michael Jackson song with that instrumental scratching sound at the beginning. I just don't get that, poking at me type of feeling I would with the X2s. So these are just a lot more balanced, smoother, a little bit more transparent in terms of its layers and details. I think it's just a little bit more balanced. So I would say these are better at reproducing sound as you are meant to hear it. If you really just want to hear pop and rock and just enjoy that kind of emotions, raw emotions, X2HRs or SHP9600 will give you that. But if you want something a little bit more sophisticated for jazz, for classical, you just want play your lossless music and hear it the way it's meant to be, this is a lot closer to that than the X2s. And I think against the Sennheisers that I mentioned earlier, these would be fairly comparable. And here's the thing. If you wear a Sennheiser headphone, I think it's a little bit more geeky in terms of look and feel. It's just a little bit more technical looking. But with these, aesthetics-wise, they're just a lot more sophisticated, understated luxury. And it's really a piece of technology that I really wouldn't mind lying around, beside my turntable, or just, throw around in the living room. And that's what's great about it. It's not something I have to baby for, yet, I wouldn't want to, have my wife yell at me, hey, keep your audio stuff in the box. No, these are something that I think is just naturally looking good on a bookshelf, or, in your audio collection or on your rack. And you wouldn't mind leaving it out because it is that good looking. And naturally you just don't feel as geeky or dorky wearing these. Now, although these are still kind of big, but it's just with this type of headphone, this type of comfort, you are going to get a bigger, bulkier looking thing. But overall, the design language, the sound quality that I'll get from these, I think it does justify its $350 price tag. Now, if it ever goes down in price and reaches 300, or heck, even sub 300, we could only dream, right? Then that would be a steal. I think even at $300, it's really good purchase. At $350, if you have the 9500s before, if you really want to step up, I would say, yeah, save up for these. If you want something that you still want to, have a microphone attached and use a single headphone for all your music listening and gaming or conference calls and so forth, you could still do that with these. And the trick is to look up something called the mod mic, or get an external microphone. A mod mic would just, have an extra wire running towards your computer, whereas these then can just directly hook up to your amp. So it's just additional wire that you're attaching instead of replacing the wires it comes with. So there are ways to get around, but I think these are just something so good I would dedicate these for music listening and pick up the SHP9600s in addition for gaming and conference calls and so forth. But that's my take on things, and let me know if you agree with me or not in the comments below. And do remember to subscribe and turn on your notifications, come back later and check out our other videos. Thanks for your time. My favorite part about the X3 is not just the sound signature itself. It's actually the low impedance factor. So these run about 30 ohms resistance, and that's very important because for two factors. One, I don't need additional headphone amplifier if I'm plugging into my cell phone. It's enough to power it. And secondly is I don't need to keep buying equipment to use it with my X3, because if I do that, then this becomes an expensive hobby. I just keep trying to one-up in the equipment itself, and I lose the satisfaction of just listening to music and enjoying it at this price range. So that makes a good economic factor too.